Hello, Catherine. Today I will be giving a presentation of the short story The Red Line that's written by Charles Hickson in 1993. During this presentation I will touch on the structure, the characters, some of the postmodern characteristics, as well as the message, and of course I'll be giving a contextualization. If we start with the structure. The story starts in medias res, which means that the reader is given no introduction to the story or the characters or the setting, for that matter, and this really creates chaos in the story, which is very typical for postmodernism. There are also some passages in the story, and each passage starts with the name of a station, for example, Oval, which is a station in London. And this might mean that the story lasts for a short period of time, because it only takes as long as the train ride. And with each new passage, there's a new point of view. And this leads me to the characters. There are three main characters in the short story. There's the nameless man, or the cherub, which is also called, and he's introduced in the first passage, and then there's Berto. And he's introduced in the second passage, and lastly there's Denise, and she's introduced in the fifth passage. If we start with the nameless man, he is described as very clean, which can be seen here on page 62, line 8 to 10. Once he was clean and smooth all over, he studied himself in the mirror, standing naked and translucent, glistening with baby oil, his skin pure white and unblemished. So we're dealing with a white man here, and as it also said that he had no body hair because he really wants to be clean. So he is seeing body hair as being unclean and perhaps being a really bad person, for example, or being black, because we know that he's a racist. And he's very critical towards other people, which can be seen on page 66, here, line 33 to 34. But when he looked out the window, he would see people, ugly people, dirty, hairy people, people who didn't know Bob Siler or his own perfect karaoke routine. So he thinks that people with hair, they're dirty and they're just not as good people as himself. Because he's very self-satisfied. And another place where you can see that he's a racist is page 69 here on line 28 to 29. Who the fuck did he think he was, that greasy ape? And here he's talking about Berto, so he's a racist. He doesn't see black people as good as white. And there's also the use of foreshadowing, which can be seen on page 66 here. He had to do something about the stubble, which was spreading all over London. And by the stubble, he means, the dirty, hairy people, so the black people. And this leads us to Berto. And Berto is described here. He is from Venice, which means that he's a foreigner. This also means that he doesn't understand English, and this makes him really insecure. For example, here, you can see this on page 63. He hadn't been able to make himself understood, and in the end the man had simply laughed and shook his head. It had been humiliating. He hadn't found the courage to ask again. So we're dealing with Berto, who is an Italian, and he's really insecure. And he's on the tube to find Kathy, the girl who we followed to London. And she lives in Hackney, we're told, and therefore he intends to ask Denise the way to Hackney, and this takes a lot of courage for him. Because he's really scared that she'll laugh at him. And Denise, she is introduced on page 68 here, and she is described as really, really paranoid. For example, here, every man was a potential rapist. Every time you left your flat, you're a potential victim. So she has some severe prejudices against especially men, and also especially black men, which we can see here on page 71. Oh God, he was leaning forwards, and here she's talking about Berto. Unless, oh God, she thinks that he might rape her, and she'd have to wait for the next train, but she had to do something to get away from this man. So she really doesn't want to be near Berto, which again suggests that she has some severe prejudices against the stereotypical black man. And this means that Berto, he turns to the Nameless Man for directions, and then the Nameless Man, he stabs him in the chest 3 times and leaves him to die. And this was hinted, as I said, on page 66, because the cherub, which Berto calls him, and cherub means a really angelic-like creature, which is connected to the image of the stereotypical white man. And this is hinted because the cherub wants to rid London of all the stubble that's spreaded all over it. And this severe negativity is one of the postmodern characteristics, as well as chaos. As I said, the story starts in medias res, and there are 3 points of views, which is really chaotic from the reader because you're not introduced to the characters at all. So it's up to the reader to make out which character is talking, or which character we're seeing the point of view from. And there's also humor, which can be seen on page 62 here, and that's the cherub's point of view. Clean armpits, no ugly squiggles on his chest, no pubic hair polluting his penis and testicles. So he's comparing pubic hair to pollution, which is really ironic, but then again he sees hair as it's really gross and really dirty and as something only black people have. And the text is really, really critical, which leads me to the message of the story. And what Hickson, he really wants to say is that we should discard all these stereotypical prejudices that we have, because we're dealing here with 3 main characters. They're all examples of some of the stereotypes we have in society. Berto, he is a stereotypical black man, and on the outside, and one of the stereotypes is that he is, for example, a rapist, because that's what Denise sees him as, and he's dirty, and he's black, and he's hairy, and he's just unclean. But on the inside, he turns out to be a really, really good man who's just insecure and just wants some help. And then there's Denise, who's just a stereotypical scared white woman who's afraid of the big bad black man. And then she turns to the Nameless Man for comfort, but in reality she should have stayed with Berto, because the Nameless Man, and he's a stereotypical white man, because Berto describes him as a cherub. Again, that's an angelic-like creature, because he has these his skin pure white and unblemished, his little pink bow of his mouth, and his eyes the palest blue. It's also told that he has light hair, so he's just like the perfect white man on the outside, but in the inside he turns out to be a racist and a really bad character, because he just wants to rid London of the rot that it's gotten into. And if I should connect this text to another postmodern text, it would be Howl by Allen Ginsberg, because Howl criticizes the conservatism in America. And on the same note, Hickson does this as well, but only in the UK. He criticizes all the prejudices that we have in society, because we put people in stereotypes, and we really shouldn't be judging people by their looks. The same as the expression, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. We're creating all these stereotypes that, in fact, they're not true most of the time, and this story is a great example thereof, because Denise's feelings towards Berto and the way she sees him is actually the way the Nameless Man's character is, that he might be perhaps a rapist as well. Of course he's a racist, and he ends up possibly killing Berto. So he has all the bad characteristics that she thinks that Berto has. So in the end, we should just not focus on all the stereotypes and we should just learn to accept people for who they truly are.